Mike Lee from Utah last week. He is running for Bob Bennett's seat in Utah, which... I mean,
God bless you, Mike.
I may vote for a mouse over by Bob Bennett.
Oh,
man. So he's running for Bob Bennett's seat, and I was going over the news today, and I saw that...
It's not Bob Bennett's seat. It's the people's seat.
Yes. So anyway, I saw that illegals now in Arizona are saying, that's fine, we'll just leave Arizona and we'll go to Utah. Mike Lee is now in Utah. Mike, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Glenn. It's good to be with you.
When I talked to you last week, we talked about the Constitution, and I wanted to know what you knew about the Constitution. And you told me what?
I told you, well, it's the law of the land, and it's what protects our liberty by setting limits on federal power, and that national governments become abusive of power whenever their power is unlimited. That's why it's important to recognize those limits. But those limits disappear when members of Congress stop reading it and instead point across the street to the Supreme Court and say, they said we could get away with it. They said we could regulate just about anything we want.
And you said, and I really liked this line, you said to me that just because they said so doesn't mean it's so. Explain.
Well, one of the powers that Congress has is the authority to regulate interstate commerce. And since about 1942, the Supreme Court has said that Congress can regulate just about any activity that, measured in the aggregate, substantially affects interstate commerce when replicated across every state. That's legalese for they can regulate anything they want. Now, the problem is every senator and every congressman has to take an oath to the Constitution. And in my mind, that means more than simply an oath to doing whatever you can get away with in court. That means you're taking an oath to the words themselves. But just because the Supreme Court says you can do it doesn't necessarily mean it's constitutional, because not every injury to the Constitution, not every excess of power under the Constitution can be remedied in court, or will be. There are limits to what the courts practically can or will do.
Well, I mean, and the court doesn't have a history of being wrong in any place big, Jim Crow. I mean, the Jim Crow laws went through the Supreme Court.
Exactly. And if people at every level of government and every department of government would simply think through what they're doing and saying, look, regardless of what the courts will put up with as far as excesses of power under the Constitution, what is it that I am supposed to be doing in order to make the constitutional system work?
Okay, so let me ask you now, let me go to Arizona, because you're going to see an influx of illegal immigrants into Utah now. I mean, it's in the Arizona papers and everything today. They're just saying, well, we'll just go. Is what Arizona is doing, in your opinion, is it constitutional?
Well, let me put it this way. It is entirely understandable what Arizona is doing. Arizona's been put in a terrible position by a federal government that has been so busy bailing out failing banks and failing automobile companies and trying to nationalize our healthcare system, trying to require us to buy a specific type of insurance policy that we may not want to buy under penalty of federal law, that it has stopped doing the few things that it is authorized to do, that it is supposed to do, like immigration. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 gives that power to Congress. And so, governments really are like...
But wouldn't that make this then unconstitutional? Because if that is a federal law, how is the state taking that?
Well, there's nothing in the Constitution that affirmatively prohibits the states from doing anything related to immigration. The Constitution gives Congress the power to establish uniform laws governing naturalization. It doesn't prohibit the states from doing anything that might relate to that. And
so in other words, to enforce it.
Yeah, to enforce it, or to take matters into their own hands when the federal government's not doing its job.
Here's I thought the court ruling of the Constitution is not a suicide pact makes sense on the state level. That the states are being asked to commit suicide. They cannot afford the services that they are having to provide to illegal aliens. A. B. Their citizens are now being killed. Arizona has the second highest kidnapping rate in the world. The Constitution is not a suicide pact.
Indeed, I would agree. This is the perfect example of the observation I often make, which is that governments are like teenagers. They get into trouble the most when they stop doing the few things that they are supposed to do. When they stop doing their chores, they stop doing their homework, they stop focusing on those few powers that have been given to them. That's when they get into trouble.
So
they're focused on other things.
Mike, what would you do? Would you vote for amnesty?
Heavens, no. You don't want to reward those people who have been breaking the law, or else you'll just encourage a whole new wave of lawbreakers.
But why the hate?
It's not hate, Glenn. It's love. It's love for those who have come here the right way, and it's love for the process and for the system that has made America great. We want immigrants to continue coming to this country, and we want those immigrants to come here through the front door.
I would go a step further. It is love for the Mexicans and anybody else that is trying to escape corruption and blight by making sure that our system doesn't turn into their system.
Precisely.
So how are the poll numbers with you?
Well, the poll numbers are great. We're very confident. There was a Salt Lake Tribune poll that was just released. It shows me with 37% of the vote and shows Senator Bennett at about 16%.
He's actually running third in the race.
Correct.
Isn't he? Yeah, which is fantastic.
So, Mike, let me ask you a question. You familiar how I feel about progressives?
I have a pretty good idea, yes.
And Woodrow Wilson?
Yes.
You know, Utah has played a really nasty role in the history of our country when it comes to really bad decisions. We had the Smoot-Hawley Act, which really was the reason that brought on the Great Depression. Smoot-Hawley from Utah. We have Harry Reid. So, do I need more?
You can't blame us for Harry Reid. It was Nevada who elected Harry Reid.
Yeah, but Harry Reid.
Still.
We have
Bob Bennett.
Yeah, Bob Bennett. You have you have a guy who looked me in the eye. A guy who looked me in the eye and said, you know what? Cass Sunstein, he told me that this was all academic stuff. I mean, I looked him in the eye, Glenn, and Cass Sunstein, that's all academic. Cass Sunstein is going to be the most dangerous man in America when it all is said and done. Are you gonna keep your soul? Can you go to Washington and keep your soul and not be part of the problem?
Yes, I can, Glenn, and I will. And what will enable me to do that is that I'll focus on principles that don't change because they're not supposed to change. You know, the winds of political change are all around us. They are as ubiquitous as they are unmistakable. But there are some things that are supposed to change not at all, not ever. And those things are embodied in our Constitution. Now, you can change it, but it is by design very difficult to change because it's not supposed to.
But what do you say to the people? Because the freshmen come in and they say, look, man, you just need to play by the rules here on this one. We just need you to do this one because if not, you're going to be blocked out and you're going to get the robocalls and the unions are going to come after you, and you're just not going to be able to survive. You just need to make this one happen. What do you say?
Yeah. Well, I'm willing to play by the rules, but I'm going to play by a different set of rules than they're going to prescribe for me. I'm going to play by a 223-year-old rule book that we all have taken an oath to support, and everyone in the U.S. Senate and U.S. House of Representatives has taken an oath to support. And if we look to those words, They will tell us what it is that we're supposed to be doing, and more importantly, what it is that we're not supposed to be doing. The Constitution is a list of thou shalt nots to the government.